Part 14. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju Yi. Chapter 131. You have to attend the child's 100-day banquet. After he finished speaking, he looked into her eyes. Wei Yuxian also looked at him, looking at his face to see if he was joking, but the man's expression showed no joking at all. The child's 100-day banquet should indeed be treated to a drink. In fact, it should be treated once during the full moon banquet. But the child was still too young at that time, and Wei Yuxian didn't really want to do it, so it was not done. What does this man mean by bringing up this 100-day banquet and asking her to attend it in person? With the strength of the Fu family, the people invited must be prominent figures in Kyoto. This can be regarded as the Fu family's official disclosure of the existence of their two children and Wei Yuxian. Do you want to give her an identity? Thinking of this, Wei Yuxian couldn't help but be stunned when she looked at Fu Xuanyi. She stared at the person blankly, not knowing what to say. She didn't know how much weight she had in Fu Xuanyi's heart, nor how long Fu Xuanyi would last in his relationship. But now, when Fu Xuanyi said such words, she was still very surprised. At least, this man wanted to give her a status, didn't he? She is the biological mother of the young master and young lady of the Fu family. This status is enough for her to have enough food and clothing for the rest of her life. Fu Xuanyi saw with his own eyes that the people around him became dull and adorable, so he reached out his hand and rubbed her head. Have you thought about it clearly? Do you want to agree to his conditions? After Wei Yuxian heard this, she came back to her senses and felt that she had thought too far, and said, I want to think about it for a while. If she attends the 100-day banquet, everyone will know that she is Toki and Shishi's biological mother and will officially appear in Kyoto's upper-class society. This was something she had never imagined. If she had been in the past, she would have refused without even thinking about it, because the world of the rich is very complicated, and she just wanted to live a simple life. But now that she fell in love with the man in front of her, she began to hesitate. Because she also wanted to be with this man, she wanted to be worthy of him. After thinking for a while, she said softly, Okay, I promise you. When she said this, Wei Yuxian felt a little in a trance, feeling very unreal. All of this was like a dream. She never thought that she would reach this point with Fu Xuanyi. I still remember the first time I saw this man, it was in a bar room. The man's face was cold, he didn't say a few words, and he was like a big ice cube. The second time they met, it was in the hospital. She was about to have an abortion. The man suddenly appeared with a cold face and told her that she owed him 80 billion. Who would have thought that one day, she would fall in love with this cold man, and this cold man would also do those heartwarming things. Fate is such a wonderful thing. Love is an even more wonderful thing. It makes people no longer like themselves. As soon as she finished speaking, her lips were kissed by the man. His movements were so gentle, as if he was afraid that she would be hurt. How could she not like and be attached to this tenderness that belongs exclusively to her? Ask who else in this world would be so kind to her? Besides Fu Xuanyi, who else? After thinking about it carefully, I couldn't think of a second person. Soon, she no longer had the intention to think about this anymore, because her mind was unknowingly placed on this kiss, and her thoughts gradually became blurred, and she was in the clouds. The two of them were so fascinated by the kiss that they didn't realize that at the top of the stairs, Mr. Fu and the old lady were watching them with relish. The old lady looked at it for a while and didn't feel ashamed. After all, she had seen such things often. With a kind smile on her face, she turned and went upstairs. There is no room for them in this living room now. Upon seeing this, Mr. Fu followed him upstairs, followed by two nannies, who were holding Shishi and Zizi in their arms. The old lady originally planned to go out for a walk with her two children and breathe fresh air. She didn't expect to see such a scene when she got downstairs, so she had to cancel the plan. This is because plans cannot keep up with changes. But the old lady was not happy at all. Seeing that the relationship between the two was so good made her even happier. As for taking the little ones out for a walk, there is no rush on this day, there will be plenty of time in the future. Wei Yuxian had no idea that Fu's father and Fu's mother had been here. If she knew, she would probably blush and hide in her room, not coming out to see anyone for several days. The air became thinner and thinner, and the temperature on her body became hotter and hotter. She couldn't breathe for a while. I don't know how long it took before the man let go of her lips. They were red, delicate, and a little swollen. Wei Yuxian's face was also flushed, and she breathed in the fresh air, her chest rising and falling a little. She snuggled in the man's arms, like a bird clinging to a human, so petite, so lovable. Fu Xuanyi felt that it was not enough and wanted to go further and ask for more. God knows how long it has been since he last ate meat. He is not a monk and cannot look at the person he loves without any desire or desire. On the contrary, he wanted to be with her all the time. Be intimate with her. His big hands wandered around the hem of her clothes, looking for opportunities. Wei Yuxian hadn't come back to her senses yet, but she also noticed that the big hand was about to move. Almost immediately, she knew what the man wanted to do, and quickly pressed the man's big hand and took it aside. As soon as she took it away, the man put his hand back to its original position, and opened the hem of her clothes at the same position. Wei Yuxian was startled and hurriedly grabbed his hand again. While grabbing it, she said, "No. There are 3 reasons. One is that I am still in the living room and someone will pass by at any time. It would be bad if I was seen. The second reason is that she has only given birth for 2 months and her body has recovered a lot, but it is not enough. The third reason is that it is daytime, not even broad daylight. She was so shy at night, let alone during the day, that she would die of shame." Fu Xuanyi said, "Okay, be good." Wei Yuxian held his hand tightly, preventing him from moving, and said, "No. It's still in the living room." Fu Xuanyi picked her up and uttered 3 words, "Go back to the room." "I mean, if it's not possible in the living room, then it can be done in the room." Wei Yuxian was afraid that she would fall, so she quickly hugged the man's neck and whispered in his ear, "No way. It's still daytime. Also, I just gave birth to a baby." In the latter sentence, Wei Yuxian's voice became even softer. "Totally shy?" After giving so many reasons, the last word is 3 words, "No." Fu Xuanyi carried him all the way back to the bedroom, put him on the bed, got up and said, "It's okay during the day. The doctor said that it will be okay after 2 months. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding." After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Ju Yi. Chapter 132. People who have had a natural birth can have sex after 2 months as long as their body recovers well. Wei Yuxian stayed in the Fu mansion and was served by a bunch of people every day. There were many people who cared more about her body than she did, so her body recovered very well. Now, it is also possible. Fu Xuanyi knew this very clearly, because he did not want to harm Wei Yuxian's body. If it would really harm Wei Yuxian's body, he would never do it. No matter how impatient she is, she still has to wait until Wei Yuxian is fully recovered. With the previous experience, Wei Yuxian will no longer doubt what Fu Xuanyi said. He said it will be okay in 2 months, and it will be okay in 2 months. This man knew more than she did, and she didn't know why he wanted to ask a doctor about this. If it were her, she would be embarrassed to ask. It's just this man who is not even ashamed to ask other doctors about everything. And why does Mr. Xian ask these embarrassing questions? Of course it's so that I can be intimate with Guai. Wei Yuxian was extremely embarrassed. Seeing the man about to make his next move, she really couldn't accept doing such a thing in broad daylight. He could only say with a red face, "In the evening, how about the evening?" The voice was small, like a mosquito, but Fu Xuanyi still heard it, and he heard it extremely clearly. It was rare that he was willing to accept it. Fu Xuanyi was overjoyed and took a step back and said, "Okay, I'll listen to you." Wei Yuxian finally escaped from the man's clutches, pushed him away, pushed him to the other side of the bed, stood up and arranged her clothes. She lowered her head and straightened her clothes, making sure that nothing was loose, and then she breathed a sigh of relief. Turning her head to look at the man's expression, she saw the man lying lazily on the bed, looking at her with a slight smile on his lips. This look is so tempting. Such a word popped into Wei Yuxian's mind, and even she was shocked. She found that this man was getting better and better at taking advantage of her beauty. Like a scared kitten covering her mouth, she quickly fled the scene, fearing that she would be obsessed with this man and lose her mind. People like good-looking things, whether they are things or people. Good-looking people do attract more attention. This has nothing to do with superficiality or not. Wei Yuxian admitted that this man was indeed becoming more and more handsome as he grew older, and the mature aura about him hid her face, making it difficult to resist. The man watched her run away in a hurry, and the corners of his mouth became even wider. He stood up slowly and followed her to see where he had gone. Wei Yuxian first ran into the yard and breathed in the fresh air outside to calm her heart and stop beating faster. Afterwards, she went to the two little darlings' room to watch people. She thought after not seeing the two babies for a while. When she entered the room, her entire state adjusted, her face was no longer red, and her heartbeat returned to normal. In the baby's room, Fu's father and Fu's mother were both there, as were the two nannies. At this moment, the two babies just woke up and were crying. The whole room was filled with the loud cries of two children. Just as it was time to breastfeed, Wei Yuxian asked everyone to go out, leaving only herself and her children in the room to breastfeed their two children. The two children smelled the familiar scent of their mother and felt much relieved. They stopped crying and waited for their mother to feed them. Fu Xuanyi was also kicked out and waited boredly outside the door with Fu's father and Fu's mother. Outside the door, Fu's mother looked at her son, thinking of what happened downstairs just now, and asked, "Are you getting closer to Yuxian? I saw you both when you were downstairs just now." If Wei Yuxian heard this, she would definitely blush, but now it was the shameless Master Xian who heard this, and he would not blush because of this. He even raised the corners of his mouth slightly and said in a very good mood. "Now that Shishi and Zizi have also come out, when do you plan to give Yuxian a formal title?" Mother Fu asked. "The position of the young lady of the Fu family can only be Yuxian, do you hear that?" Fu Xuanyi thought of the people inside, and the smile on his face became more obvious, and said, "If I hear it, it will only be her." Then, he answered Fu's mother's previous question, "She's still young, don't be in a hurry, give her time. If he brings up the matter of marriage now, I'm afraid the little guy won't be willing. Give her time to think carefully and make her willing to marry him." Fu's mother, "Why aren't you in a hurry? Yuxian is already old enough to get married, and what if she falls in love with someone else? It means that he dislikes Fu Xuanyi's age and is afraid that he has no charm and cannot retain people." Fu Xuanyi looked at his mother steadily without saying a word, but his eyes seemed to say, "Do you think there are several people who can compare with this face?" After a while, he said, "You shouldn't be unsure about your genes. Fu Xuanyi looks very similar to Fu's father, but also somewhat similar to Fu's mother. All of Fu's mother's advantages were passed down to him. When Fu's mother was young, she was famous as the most beautiful woman in Kyoto, and her appearance was beyond words. Fu's mother thought about what she looked like when she was young, then looked at her handsome son, and said nothing. Indeed, Her son is very handsome and has inherited all their advantages. Then she added, the outside world is so chaotic and so tempting. Those boys are so sweet-mouthed. I'm afraid that Yuxian will be deceived. Especially in universities, there are many young and handsome boys who are youthful and energetic, not to mention attracting many girls. Isn't she afraid? It's almost time for Yuxian to go to school. It's not that Yuxian shouldn't be allowed to go to school, it's just that she's afraid that the boys outside will trick her and trick her away. In response, Fu Xuanyi just said, you don't have to worry. He won't let those people have such an opportunity, not at all. No one can take away the person he identifies. Seeing her son strategizing, Fu's mother could only choose to believe him and asked, then when do you plan to get the certificate? Fu Xuanyi, look at her. It's better to give Yuxian a formal status as soon as possible, so that your father and I can feel at ease. In the room, after Wei Yuxian finished breastfeeding her 2 babies, she let people outside come in. She held Hizzy in her arms and burped her unfamiliarly. Fu's mother also picked up Shishi and burped him, teasing him while doing so. The scene was very heartwarming, and Wei Yuxian felt warm in her heart when she saw it. After burping, Wei Yuxian interacted with the 2 babies again, making them giggle. After a while, the 2 babies were tired again and fell asleep. Time passed in this warm picture. Soon, evening came and it was time for Wei Yuxian to fulfill her promise. Warm reminder, if you find that clicking the next page will force you to jump to other websites, please use the chapter error or contact us at the bottom to inform us. We will handle it as soon as possible. Thank you for your understanding. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 133. Fu Xuanyi has been waiting all day just for this moment. The room was filled with the pleasant smell of incense. Wei Yuxian couldn't tell what it smelled like, but she only felt that it smelled unusually good. It's so perfect for what's going to happen next. When Wei Yuxian came out of the shower, she put on a bathrobe and tied the belt tightly around her waist. Her face was a little red, reddened by the hot water, and her skin was white and tender, even whiter than usual. Fu Xuanyi couldn't help but feel his throat tightening after seeing it. He stood up and went forward to pick him up. Wei Yuxian was startled when she saw the dangerous look in his wolf-like eyes. She stopped and said, wait a minute, you go take a shower first. She said to the man very embarrassedly. After experiencing this, she is no longer a little white rabbit who doesn't understand anything. Although she is still very innocent, she also knows some precautions. For example, it is better for the body to take a shower before having sex. She didn't want her body to suffer. After hearing this, Fu Xuanyi went to take a shower obediently, because he also knew that it was best to take a shower before having sex. I was so impatient just now that I forgot about it. For the sake of his obedient body, no matter how impatient he is, he can't mess around. Wei Yuxian watched the man enter the bathroom, and then the sound of running water sounded. Thinking of what was about to happen, her heartbeat accelerated. She stared blankly at the ceiling, extremely nervous, and took deep breaths. I don't know how long it took, but the sound of water in the bathroom stopped. Her breathing stopped for a while, and it took a while before she returned to normal. The bathroom door opened and the man came out. She turned her head and looked over. The man's hair was half dried, and he had a bath towel loosely wrapped around his waist, exposing his entire upper body. The powerful muscles are obvious, the chest muscles are bulging, and the abdominal muscles are clearly divided into 8 pieces. The sexual tension is bursting. Hormones diffuse. Wei Yuxian turned her head away suddenly. He took a deep breath and bit his lower lip. Then, he turned his head back little by little, taking a somewhat evasive look at the man's figure. Really, really good. If you put a figure like this outside, I'm afraid it will be very popular. Fu Xuanyi looked at the person on the bed who looked shy but didn't dare to look, and he couldn't help but curl up the corners of his mouth. Ever since he had this little guy, he found that he became more and more smiling, and his emotions were all controlled by this little guy. He walked forward, sat down by the bed, took the little guy's hand away from his face, and said, "Watch it if you want." Wei Yuxian quickly closed her eyes and shook her head like a rattle, as if to say, "I won't look, I won't look, I won't look." Fu Xuanyi didn't force her, as he knew what kind of temper his family had. Not wanting to waste too much time and just want to eat meat quickly, he pressed the person under him and kissed her. The lights haven't been turned off, but neither of them can care about that at this moment. After the kiss ended and the clothes were on the floor, Wei Yuxian's eyes were red and she whispered, "I'm afraid of pain, be gentle." Okay, Fu Xuanyi promised her, his movements extremely gentle. One night, spring night. The sun climbed to the edge of the sky and came out little by little, shining on the big trees, the ground, and the window sill. The sunlight slipped through the window and slipped into the room, crawling inside like a naughty child to illuminate more places. Its ambition was grand, but it had just taken the step of conquest when it was cut off by a curtain. Darkness and silence returned to the room, like night. On the bed, the extremely tired person slept soundly, nestled in the man's arms, with the little bird clinging to him. In the living room of Fu Mansion, Fu's father and Fu's mother were holding two babies who had just drank milk. The latter glanced in the direction of the stairs. It was already past 10 o'clock, but there was still no movement. He knew in his heart what happened to them last night. He lowered his head and said to the baby in his arms, "Our family always knows that we are going to have another younger brother or sister soon." The tone was full of laughter. "I remember that it was the first time I had these two little babies, and if I do it a few more times." Fu's mother could not imagine the scene of a room full of children. When the time comes, the house will be filled with children and grandchildren, and there will be a circle of little carrot heads around her feet to celebrate. In that scene, she can be happy from the first day of the new year to the New Year's Eve. It's just that Fu's mother's thoughts are beautiful. In reality, she is still far away from having a third grandson. Wei Yuxian is now smarter and has taken good safety measures to prevent pregnancy from happening again. She had just given birth to two children and had not been studying in college for long. Wei Yuxian didn't want to suffer again. And with Shishi and Zhizi, she is contented, has children, and has no regrets. If she considers having children in the future, it will definitely be after college. The most important thing now is for her to finish college, get her college diploma, and find a good job. Back in the room, the curtains are very light blocking and the dark environment is very suitable for sleeping. The air conditioner was also adjusted to the most suitable temperature, and it was extremely comfortable to lie under the quilt. Such a beautiful sleeping environment makes people not want to wake up. But no matter how hard he wanted to wake up, he would eventually wake up. It was close to lunch, and Wei Yuxian woke up. Seeing the dim environment in the room, she thought it was still night, but she clearly remembered that it was a little brighter when she fell asleep. Could it be that she slept through the night? The thought shocked her. She hurriedly crawled out of Fu Xuanyi's arms and searched for her mobile phone in the dark, but accidentally pulled it around her waist. Suddenly, a sense of sourness came over her, her waist softened, and she fell to the bed. This familiar feeling. She didn't expect that Fu Xuanyi was so gentle last night. Why was her waist still so sore? My body was also tired, as if I had been moving bricks for 10 days without a break. Fu Xuanyi hugged her and asked, "What's the matter, darling?" Wei Yuxian didn't have the nerve to say it, so she could only pretend not to hear his inquiry and asked him, What time is it? When I opened my mouth, my throat was a little hoarse, dry, and uncomfortable. Fu Xuanyi glanced at the clock on the bedside table and said, "It's almost 12 o'clock." Then, he poured a glass of water, helped the person in his arms sit up, and fed her to drink. It's the same as taking care of a patient. In fact, Wei Yuxian is no different from a patient now. Her whole body is sore and limp, and she can't exert herself. Whether she can walk is another question. She was really afraid that she would have to be carried down by Fu Xuanyi like last time. When she heard that it was past 11 o'clock, she was obviously relieved. Fortunately, she did not sleep until night, otherwise, she would have been embarrassed to appear in front of the master and the old lady. After drinking the water, her throat felt much better, and her body didn't feel so soft anymore. She tried to get up and walk, and found that she could still walk, but her posture was a bit strange. After Fu Xuanyi opened the curtains with the remote control, he followed her into the bathroom, fearing that she would lose strength and fall. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 134. In the bathroom, as soon as Wei Yuxian entered, she went to the mirror to check her neck to see if there was anything inappropriate on it. After looking at it, I found that there were several red marks on it. She turned back and glared at the man who followed, and said, "Didn't I tell you not to put it on your neck, why did you?" She made a promise to this man last night not to leave any red marks on her neck, and he agreed to her promise. But now, those bright things on the neck are so dazzling. This man doesn't mean what he says. She gave him another angry look. Fu Xuanyi stepped forward and hugged the person into his arms, saying, "That's wrong, I really can't help it. Being a good boy is too tempting. Just you can talk." Wei Yuxian blushed slightly and said in her heart, "This mark has been left, and there is no way to remove it now. What she should consider is to go downstairs later. I woke up so late and still had this thing around my neck. I wonder what they did last night." The old lady is so open-minded and won't say anything, but she still feels very embarrassed. After all, the old lady is an elder. She can only blame this man for insisting on leaving these things around her neck. How could she cover up on such a hot day? Forget it, there is a saying that as long as I am not embarrassed, others will be embarrassed, so let her try it too. Just pretend that the thing on your neck doesn't exist and you won't feel embarrassed. Wei Yuxian wanted to understand this, picked up her toothbrush and brushed her teeth, then pushed her elbow back to ask the man to let go of her. Fu Xuanyi knew that he was in the wrong, so he let her go and washed up with her. After washing up, Wei Yuxian felt very hungry. She hadn't eaten for a long time. She had spent a lot of energy last night and needed to replenish a lot of energy. She walked downstairs slowly, trying to make her walking posture more normal. Fu Xuanyi was not in a hurry, followed her, and asked, "Want to help?" The implication is, "Do you want me to hug you?" Wei Yuxian turned around and glared at him, gritted her teeth and said, "No need." Who did she become like this because of? It's not because of him. You said it would be fine if it happened once or twice, and she could accept it, but this man, one night. Tell him to stop, it's like he can't hear you. She said she was so tired, but this man seemed like he couldn't hear her, and even coaxed her by saying it was the last time. The last thing is again and again. When she thought about it, Wei Yuxian became a little angry that this man didn't mean what he said. And now, this man is still here saying such things. She took a deep breath and kept going downstairs. Fu Xuanyi touched his nose and said no more. He just stared at the figure in front of him tightly, fearing that something might happen to her. With this thought in mind, he took 2 more steps forward and placed a hand on her waist, weakly protecting her. Going downstairs, Fu's father and Fu's mother had already sat down at the dining table, as if waiting for their arrival. The second elder was indeed waiting for their arrival. Since he didn't know when they would get up, the second elder could only wait. If they still don't come down after a certain period of time, the two elders plan to eat it themselves. Wei Yuxian felt quite embarrassed and asked the two elderly people to wait for them to eat. Sitting down at the dining table, Wei Yuxian said apologetically, "I'm sorry, sir, madam, for keeping you two waiting for so long." The old lady smiled at her with a kind face and said, "It's okay, we just sat down." After speaking, she patted Wei Yuxian's hand and told her not to feel any psychological burden. Wei Yuxian still felt a little embarrassed. When she remembered who the culprit was, she glanced at the man opposite her secretly, with annoyance. It looks like she is acting coquettishly with a man, which is very cute. In Fu Xuanyi's eyes, Wei Yuxian like this is cute. Lunch was served by the servant, and Wei Yuxian finally no longer had to eat nutritious meals, and could eat the same meal as everyone else. When she ate the food cooked by top chefs, she thought it tasted very good, even better than what she cooked. Also, if the food is not delicious, you can no longer work as a chef in the Fu mansion. After lunch, Wei Yuxian regained her strength and her body was no longer so weak. She ate in the living room for a while, then went to the child's room to see the child for a while, fed her milk, and then the teacher who taught her classes came. Because she didn't wake up in the morning class was delayed. Wei Yuxian didn't want to be unable to keep up, so she asked the teacher to teach the morning content in the afternoon. This class lasted only one afternoon. Fu Xuanyi couldn't touch the fragrant and soft person all afternoon, and he felt a little resentful in his heart. Why do you still have to go to class on weekends? Weekends are for rest. Or to put it another way, weekends are meant to be spent with him. He usually has to go to work and doesn't see anyone all day long. Finally, he came on the weekend and could see more people, but Guai still had to go to class. Full of resentment, Mr. Xian decided not to arrange for a teacher to come to class next week, so that his darling would have 2 days of weekend time all to himself. Wei Yuxian didn't know what this man was planning. The reason why she had to go to class on weekends was to not fall behind in her studies. In fact, it is good to have classes at home, but without the atmosphere of school, she still prefers the feeling of everyone attending class together. If you stay bored at home every day, you will get sick from boredom. In the evening, Master Xian, who hadn't touched his cute little hand all afternoon, kept holding his cute little hand tightly and couldn't bear to let go for a moment. Wei Yuxian looked helplessly at the man's big hand, her own hand was completely wrapped in it. She wanted to shake him off, but this man was very strong and she couldn't shake him off at all. He could only let this man lead him. Wherever he goes, this man will follow him. Slowly, it was time for the university to start, and Wei Yuxian could only watch others go to school while she took care of herself at home. But she didn't fall behind in her studies. She also learned what others learned at school, and even learned more than others. In this way, time came to the day of the 100 Days banquet. The Fu family had already sent invitations to the dignitaries in Kyoto, inviting those who had a good reputation to attend the 100-day banquet of the two little darlings. When everyone received the invitation and saw the content on it, they were completely shocked. This, when did Mr. Xian have a child? It's almost 100 days away. Why didn't they receive any news? Some big families are still thinking about marrying with the Fu family. If they can catch up with the Fu family, then their families will also be able to rise with the tide. But now, Master Xian even has a child. Is there any chance for them? At the same time, the wealthy families are also curious about who is the woman who gave birth to Master Xian's child. What is your identity? After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 135. Everyone came to the 100 Days banquet full of questions. On this day, Wei Yuxian's dress also became different. The old lady found a makeup artist for her, and gave her makeup that fit her face very well, and paired it with a little dress. She didn't look too good. She has also been learning about etiquette these days, so when Fan comes together, she really looks like the eldest lady of a certain family. The old lady looked at Wei Yuxian, who was wearing a custom-made evening dress and makeup. She spun her around and nodded in praise. "It looks good. It looks so good." Wei Yuxian was a little embarrassed to be praised by the old lady like this. She praised the old lady and said, "Old lady, you are also very good looking." Fu's mother was also dressed very grandly today. Although she was almost 70 years old, her temperament was still revealed after putting on the dress. There's no need to pretend, the natural aura is just there in her body. Wei Yuxian looked very envious, thinking that it would be great if she could have such a temperament one day. After putting on makeup, Fu Xuanyi also came in. He was wearing a custom-made black suit and his hair was slicked back. He looked mature and stable. He asked, "Are you ready?" Most of the guests were here, waiting for their host to show up. Wei Yuxian stood up and put on a pair of 5-centimeter high heels. They were too high for her and would cause her to fall. She said, "Okay." The Fu family, including Wei Yuxian and the two babies, all walked downstairs together. Downstairs, there was a lot of people talking. Everyone was talking about Bao Bao and Wei Yuxian. Everyone asked each other, wanting to get more information, but they couldn't find out anything. They could only look towards the stairs, hoping that the master would come down quickly so that they could see who could take down the aloof Master Xian. Finally, with everyone's eager anticipation, the Fu family walked down, and next to Fu Xuanyi was a strange woman. I saw Master Xian holding the woman in a very intimate manner. Behind Mr. Xian, there were two nannies, each holding a child in their hands. Then they suddenly remembered that the invitation was talking about a 100-day banquet for two children. Therefore, Master Xian suddenly had two children. This, doesn't it mean that the heirs of the Fu family are in difficulty, and Master Xian is extinct? How come two of them came out at once? Everyone was so shocked that they were speechless and stared blankly at the people walking down the stairs. It was the first time for Wei Yuxian to attend a banquet with so many people, and it was a banquet for a top wealthy family. It would be a lie to say she wasn't nervous. Under the attention of so many people, she became even more nervous and held Fu Xuanyi's hand harder. Fu Xuanyi noticed her movements and patted her hand gently to comfort her and tell her not to be so nervous. He turned his head and gave her a look, as if to say, "Don't be afraid, I'm here." Wei Yuxian was a little less nervous and nodded gently to Fu Xuanyi. When we got downstairs, everyone in the banquet hall also came to their senses. Several families with good relations with the Fu family gathered around first, including Fu's mother's family. "Master Xian, when did you have your child? Why hasn't anyone received any news? Is this madam? She is really good looking, and she is a perfect match for you, Master Xian. These two little guys are so cute. Congratulations to Mr. Xian on the birth of his son." Everyone's inquiries and congratulations rang in my ears. Many people also asked about the news about Wei Yuxian and their two children. Fu Xuanyi was always the one who didn't like to talk. Wei Yuxian was nervous, so she didn't speak. She only smiled and said thank you when the guests congratulated them. Only Fu's father and Fu's mother were answering everyone's questions. From the answers given by Fu's father and Fu's mother, everyone knew that Wei Yuxian was Fu Xuanyi's fiancé, and their two children were a boy and a girl. The elder brother was named Fu Shiwen, and the younger sister was named Fu Zhixu. And why are the two children only made public today? It's because the two children were hard won, so they need to be protected even more. Wave after wave of guests came forward to congratulate them, and the gifts they brought had already been handed over to the servants to put away at the door. Everyone was very curious about Wei Yuxian and the two children. They asked about Wei Yuxian's life experience and turned their attention to them. Everyone sighed inwardly when they saw that Master Xian's fiancée was actually a little girl who looked underage and had no background. Who would have thought that Master Xian's fiancée would be a little girl with no background? Back then, they still dreamed of marrying Master Xian, but now, there is no chance. After everyone congratulated each other, they started chatting among themselves, some talking about business, and some taking this opportunity to make connections and make connections. All in all, it was very lively. Wei Yuxian stood for a while and felt a little tired. She was not used to wearing high heels, and she only learned to wear them in the past half-month. She said to the man next to her, "Actuan, I'm a little tired." Her voice was so small that only he could hear her. Fu Xuanyi felt sorry for her, told his parents, and took her to sit on the sofa. He asked the waiter to bring a glass of juice and sat with her. Wei Yuxian drank the juice. Her feet were finally not tired anymore, and she looked at all kinds of people in the banquet hall, including handsome young masters, good-looking young ladies, and fat and bald bosses. She saw several big bosses who had appeared in the news, but she didn't recognize most of the others. After just sitting for a while, someone sat down next to Fu Xuanyi and started talking to Fu Xuanyi. They were talking about business. Wei Yuxian couldn't understand this, so she could only keep smiling and stay by Fu Xuanyi's side quietly and obediently. No one talked to her, and she couldn't play with her mobile phone. She just sat there like a mascot, very bored. Finally, the boss who was talking to Fu Xuanyi left. Wei Yuxian breathed a sigh of relief, and finally no longer had to hold on like this. Fu Xuanyi also turned to look at her and asked, "Are you bored?" She said, "It's okay." Fu Xuanyi brought her a small cake and asked her to eat it as dessert. Just as he was about to say something to her, another heroic young lady sat down next to him. This young lady looked very familiar with Fu Xuanyi. As soon as she sat down, she shouted, "Ah Xian." Fu Xuanyi could only turn his head and look at the person who came, with no expression on his face, which was his usual behavior towards people other than Wei Yuxian. He said, "Miss Qin." The person who came was the eldest lady of the Qin family in Kyoto, who was similar in age to Fu Xuanyi. This person was also a very talented person. Among all the brothers and sisters, she had the most talent. She relied on her own strength to hold the Qin group in her hands. Fu's group has business dealings with Qin's group, and since the two are classmates, their relationship will be better. Miss Qin's name was Qin Junling. She had an aggressive, mature, and beautiful appearance, and she was a perfect royal sister. Wei Yuxian was stunned when she saw her. Because she thinks Qin Junling is very good-looking and the kind of mature and successful woman she wants to be. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 136. Qin Junling held a glass of red wine in her hand, clinked the glasses with Fu Xuanyi, took a sip, looked at Wei Yuxian with a smile, and asked, "Is this your fiancé?" Fu Xuanyi held Wei Yuxian's hand and said, "Hmm." Qin Junling had a nice smile on his face and said, "Won't you introduce me to him?" After hearing this, Fu Xuanyi introduced their names to each other and then left. Qin Junling was amused for a while, like a lazy and wild cat, and said, "You are still like this and don't say a few words." Fu Xuanyi glanced at her and didn't say a few words. Instead, he squeezed his obedient hand tightly. Wei Yuxian wanted to pull her hand back. After all, it was not good to have her hand played with like this in public, but as soon as she made a move, Fu Xuanyi increased his strength to prevent her from pulling her hand back. Qin Junling naturally noticed the two people's actions and smiled again, but the smile didn't stop in his eyes. She turned to Wei Yuxian and said, "Can I call you Asian?" Wei Yuxian quickly put her thoughts back, looked at Qin Junling and said, "Of course, Miss Qin." "Qin Junling, what's your name, Miss Qin?" "It's too unfamiliar. I have a good relationship with Xian. We grew up together and have been classmates all our lives. Just call me Sister Qin." Wei Yuxian didn't know why, but she felt a little uncomfortable after hearing her words, but after thinking about it carefully, she didn't find anything wrong and said, "Okay, Sister Qin." Qin Junling asked again, "How did you and Xian meet?" When Wei Yuxian thought about her encounter with Fu Xuanyi, she really felt like sighing at the wonder of fate. However, she couldn't say it out loud, so she smiled awkwardly and said, "This." Just when she was thinking about the reason, Fu Xuanyi said, "Miss Qin, how is your company doing lately?" This statement was regarded as saving Wei Yuxian's life. The latter looked at him with grateful eyes and even kept her hand calmly in his. Qin Junling was stunned. He didn't expect Fu Xuanyi to speak suddenly. He could only answer his question and said, "It's all good. I have a project in hand recently and I want to see you." Fu Xuanyi's tone was calm, and the expression on his face did not change. He asked, "Is it reliable?" He took off the prayer beads from his wrist and twisted them again and again. His Guai couldn't tell that there was a hint of thorn in this woman's words, but he could tell that what he just said was to deliberately make things difficult for his Guai. Qin Junling could clearly detect that Fu Xuanyi's tone had become colder, and she didn't know why he suddenly changed his face. He could only smile and say in a relaxed tone, "Of course it is reliable, otherwise I wouldn't come to you." Fu Xuanyi said and said, "Let's talk about it later." After saying that, there was nothing more to say, and his eyes were not on her, but on Wei Yuxian. Seeing that she didn't take a bite of the cake, he picked up his fork and fed it to her. Wei Yuxian looked at his actions with fear, whether he opened his mouth or not. He obviously didn't expect that Fu Xuanyi would do this in public. She was so thin-skinned that she never thought of asking Fu Xuanyi to feed her when no one was around, let alone in public. She reached out to take the fork from Fu Xuanyi's hand and said, "I'll eat it myself." Fu Xuanyi didn't force her to feed her. When he saw her face turn slightly red, he knew that she was shy again and was in a better mood. On the side, Qin Junling watched their interaction, holding the hands at his sides tightly, and could not hold back the smile on his face. However, years of facial management still made her smile. At this moment, she knew that she was no longer suitable to stay here. Fu Xuanyi's action was obviously an eviction order. She saw it clearly and didn't stay any longer. She stood up and said, "Axuan, if I have nothing to do, I'll go over there. I just saw Mr. Lu over there." Fu Xuanyi said without even turning his head, looking at the person he wanted to see with gentle eyes. "It's as if everyone else is just air." Qin Junling gritted his back teeth, held the half-drunk glass of red wine in his hand, and walked away on high heels. The movement on their side was not big, but it also attracted the attention of some people. After seeing Qin Junling leave, several people gathered together and talked quietly. "I heard that the eldest daughter of the Qin family grew up with Master Xian's childhood sweetheart. The eldest daughter also likes Master Xian." "What childhood sweethearts?" "It just happens that they go to the same school as Master Xian every time. If this can be considered childhood sweethearts, then I have nothing to say. But it's true that Miss Qin likes Master Xian. I heard that she has liked him since high school. It's been at least 10 years now and she hasn't given up yet. She has been single all these years and no one likes her. It's because of Master Xian, but Master Xian doesn't like her. If you ask me, Miss Qin should give up as soon as possible. Master Xian already has a fiancé and even a child. She is completely out of luck. It's just a pity that Miss Qin has such a good skin and looks as charming as a fairy. If she were put outside, how many people would like her, but she hanged herself on Master Xian's tree. If Miss Jean is willing to set her sights outside, I don't know how many people will like her. My son, he says every day that he won't marry anyone but her, which makes me very worried. Several people were talking quietly, but they didn't expect that these words would still reach Qin Junling's ears. Here, Wei Yuxian finished a small cake by herself, and there was no one around Fu Xuanyi to chat with. She looked in the direction of Qin Junling and said, Miss Qin is such a successful woman, and her aura is too strong. Fu Xuanyi raised his eyelids, do you like her? Wei Yuxian hurriedly shook her head and said, no, I just think her aura is very strong, and I want to be such a person in the future. Fu Xuanyi frowned slightly and said, she is not as good as you think. She knows people, faces but not hearts. Be good, don't imitate her. Qin Junling is a smiling tiger, he always smiles when he meets others, he is used to hiding his emotions, and he is very deep. His guai is so simple, it's better not to become that kind of person, it's good to be simple. When Wei Yuxian heard this, she looked at Fu Xuanyi and then at Qin Junling, who was chatting and laughing with others. She never expected that Qin Junling would be evaluated like this by Fu Xuanyi. She did feel a little uncomfortable just now, but her contact with Qin Junling was short, just a few words, so she couldn't tell what kind of person she was. Anyway, Qin Junling's first impression is that he is an easy person to get along with, but who would have thought? Wei Yuxian looked away and sighed in her heart, people's hearts are really complicated. But she didn't take it to heart and ate the fruit Fu Xuanyi brought to her. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 137. After the 100 Days banquet, all the upper-class wealthy families in Kyoto knew that Master Xian had a fiancée named Wei Yuxian and 2 children, a son and a daughter. His life could be considered complete. I didn't expect that Master Xian would do great things in a low voice. It was such a big surprise for them when they arrived. Those wealthy families who wanted to marry their daughters into the Fu family regretted why they didn't let their daughters seduce Fu Xuanyi earlier. Otherwise, after hooking up with the Fu family, they will be able to lift all boats. It's just that it's too late to regret now, everything has already happened. In the Fu mansion, Wei Yuxian was not affected at all. Her only feeling was that the 100-day banquet was too boring, so she kept sitting and eating and watching Fu Xuanyi chatting with others. Although later on, the old lady took her and introduced her to the ladies in Kyoto, but she still felt bored. Fortunately, it's all over, and it's finally time for her to go back to school. It was already 1 month after the university started. Wei Yuxian stepped into this land again, feeling a wave of emotion in her heart. In the morning, Fu Xuanyi personally took her to school. Behind their car, there was a black car, and Wei Yuxian didn't know who was in the car. I can only ask the people around me, why does the car behind us keep following us? The man glanced at the rearview mirror and uttered 2 words, bodyguard. Wei Yuxian's eyes widened and her mouth opened slightly. She was stunned for a moment and asked, how many? Fu Xuanyi, 4. Wei Yuxian's eyes opened even wider, so many. She thought there were 2, but she didn't expect there were 4. Fu Xuanyi said calmly, not much. He originally wanted to arrange 10, but thinking that his family would definitely not agree, after thinking about it carefully, he changed it to 4. He doesn't want his darling to be bullied again. This time, he wants to let his darling go to college with peace of mind. Wei Yuxian tried to discuss it with him and said, can there be 2? 4 would be too ostentatious. People might think I am a promiscuous person. In her imagination, the 4 bodyguards must be tall, muscular, and wearing black suits on hot days. In TV dramas, bodyguards all dress up like this, which makes people put off. Fu Xuanyi guessed what she was thinking. He raised the corner of his mouth and teased her, 2 are too few, how about 20? Wei Yuxian was shocked, and she didn't dare to say anything anymore, and said, actually, I think 4 is pretty good, so let's go with 4, it's pretty good, pretty good. Fu Xuanyi laughed again and said nothing. The car drove all the way to the school gate. Wei Yuxian loosened her seat belt and prepared to get out of the car. Unexpectedly, as soon as she took it off, the car started again. When she looked up, she saw that Fu Xuanyi had already driven the car into the school. The car behind also drove in. She was a little stunned, then thought of the man's identity, and said nothing, enjoying such a special service. I thought, it would be great if I had money. I could drive directly to the school without having to walk any further. The car drove all the way to the downstairs where the principal's office was located. Wei Yuxian also saw that the principal, who was rare to see every year, was actually waiting downstairs in person. This man still has face. After getting out of the car, a wave of heat greeted her. Wei Yuxian was held by Fu Xuanyi's hand and walked over. The people in the car behind him also got out, and Wei Yuxian saw a familiar person, Lu Changxiao. Why is he here? In addition, Assistant Guan also came with her, and 3 other bodyguards, 2 girls and 1 boy, all looked young and about the same age as her. This are completely different from what she imagined. Several bodyguards saw Wei Yuxian looking at them and gave Wei Yuxian a youthful smile. Here, when the principal and several leaders of the school saw that the person had finally arrived, they greeted him with a smile and said, "Hello, Mr. Xian." "Hello, madam." Fu Xuanyi said lightly yes, his face was expressionless and cold. Everyone was used to Master Xian's cold face and didn't say anything. Wei Yuxian greeted the leaders politely, "Hello principal, hello teachers." The smiles on the faces of several leaders became even brighter, and they said hey. It was hot, so the principal didn't dare to let people stay outside for any longer, so he invited people into the teaching building and took the elevator all the way up to the principal's office. In the principal's office, the air conditioner is turned on fully, and it is extremely cool as soon as you enter. Wei Yuxian sweated a little and took out a tissue to wipe it off. I usually look at the large principal's office, so many people poured in at once, and it instantly seemed a little crowded. Sitting down on the sofa, Wei Yuxian also enjoyed the service of the principal pouring tea for her personally. She couldn't bear it, but when she saw the calm look of the man next to her, she felt relieved. Next, Assistant Guan started chatting with the principal. Wei Yuxian didn't have to say anything, she just sat there and listened. She finally understood why Fu Xuanyi brought Assistant Guan with him. Guan Jinyu is very good at conversation, with a decent smile on his face, and the principal is willing to talk to him. If I talk to Mr. Xian, he will probably be frightened and won't be able to say anything. The conversation lasted for about half an hour, and everything was agreed upon. Wei Yuxian listened to the whole process, and there was no need to repeat it again. To put it simply, the main contents discussed are as follows. First, regarding Wei Yuxian's accommodation, the school will arrange the best apartment for her and give her a lunch break. Second, Wei Yuxian's travel problem is that she can freely take the car driven by the bodyguard on campus and go wherever she wants. Third, the issue of bodyguards going to school. Yes, it is the issue of bodyguards going to school. In order to make the identity of the bodyguards less obvious, the school will assign them the identity of auditors. Fourth, regarding Wei Yuxian's class issue, she is still in her original class and will be directly promoted to sophomore year after passing the assessment. Fifth, regarding the assessment issue, the assessment time is scheduled for today. All subjects will be tested, but there will not be many questions. Try to complete the assessment within 1 day. After making these arrangements, Fu Xuanyi also went to work in the company. After spending some time alone with Wei Yuxian and kissing several times, he reluctantly left the school. Next, it was Wei Yuxian's assessment time. The principal did not waste time and took out a few test papers for Wei Yuxian to write in the principal's office. The environment here is more comfortable, and you don't have to run around. After she finished writing a piece of paper, the teachers immediately marked it, and the exam was completed in a short time. It was noon and only half of the subjects had been taken. Wei Yuxian ate a lunch sent by Aunt Fu and took a nap in the apartment before continuing the test. That's right, even if she wasn't pregnant, Fu Xuanyi arranged for Aunt Fu to deliver meals to her every day so that she could eat healthily. Because she is still breastfeeding, it is better to eat food from home. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 138. In the afternoon, Wei Yuxian stayed in the principal's office for more than an hour before finally finishing all the subjects. The teachers were also quick in grading, correcting the test papers quickly and giving scores on the spot. The final result was, of course, that every subject was passed. And the results in every subject are excellent. The principal took Wei Yuxian's paper and looked at the neat handwriting on it. There were no mistakes in the answers. He was very satisfied. He said a few more words to Wei Yuxian and then sent her out of the office. Now that it's almost time for school to end, and the school has also undergone some new changes this year, the principal asked Wei Yuxian to walk around the campus to get familiar with it. Wei Yuxian agreed, and took 4 bodyguards with her to drive around the campus and watch them. She also allowed Lu Changxiao and the others to get familiar with the campus. From now on, they will be classmates who will go to school together. Sitting in the car, Wei Yuxian looked at the familiar campus outside, feeling both familiar and unfamiliar. At the same time, she also acted as a tour guide, introducing the school to the 4 of them. Among the 4 bodyguards, in addition to Lu Changxiao, whom they had known for a long time, there was a boy named Lu Cheng, and the other 2 girls, one named Ali and the other named Akong. Wei Yuxian looked at the 2 weak girls, who were about the same age as herself, and thought they were roped in to make up the numbers. It was quite nice chatting with the 2 of them. After walking around the campus, it was time for school to end. Fu Xuanyi's car was parked outside the campus. Lu Changxiao drove out of the school gate and put Wei Yuxian out of the car. Wei Yuxian changed cars and saw the person in the car. After not seeing him for a day, she actually missed him a little. As soon as I saw him, I couldn't help but smile on my face, and shouted with joy that I didn't even realize was in my voice, Actuan. Fu Xuanyi said with a faint smile on his lips, and helped her fasten her seat belt. By the way, he kissed the corner of her mouth. Wei Yuxian didn't expect that he would make a sneak attack, so she covered the corner of her mouth that was kissed and glared at him with an angry look. Not only was Fu Xuanyi not afraid of her eyes, he even rubbed her head and started the car. Seeing that the man was not afraid at all, Wei Yuxian lost her temper. She stretched out her hand to smooth the hair where the man had touched her. Fu Xuanyi drove the car with one hand, and used the other hand to find her hand, hold it, and asked, "How were you today? Are you tired?" Wei Yuxian did not answer his question immediately. Instead, she wanted to take her hand away from his and said, "Let go, you are still driving. It's too dangerous." Fu Xuanyi did not let go and said, "It's okay." Seeing that he could move smoothly with one hand, Wei Yuxian felt relieved and answered his question, "I'm not tired. I've been writing test papers all day. The principal's office is very comfortable." "That's good," he said. Afterwards, I started chatting with her again and again, and the atmosphere in the car was not deserted. Wei Yuxian discovered that this man was becoming more and more talkative. In the past, it would have been extremely difficult to hear a single word from this man. But it's a good thing that this man has become talkative, at least you don't have to guess his thoughts. While they were chatting, Wei Yuxian's cell phone rang several times. It was someone sending her a message. She took out her phone and looked at it, and found that it was a message sent to her by the counselor. She clicked on it and saw that it was a class schedule sent to her. She replied, "Thank you, teacher," and clicked on the file to read it. You don't know if you don't look at it, but when you look at it, she is stunned. Why are there so few classes this semester? She counted and found that there were only 11 classes in total, 3 on Monday and Tuesday, 4 on Wednesday, 1 on Thursday morning, and then they were gone. Equivalent to starting from noon on Thursday, she can spend the weekend. She thought about the classes in the first semester of her freshman year, but there were a total of 16 classes. There are 5 more classes than now. Why now? She thought the counselor had sent it wrong, so she ran to ask. The counselor checked it 3 times before telling her the result. There was no mistake. This semester, she has 11 classes per week. Then the counselor told her that the reason why she had so many classes in her freshman year was because some of the classes were required by the state, and the school put all of them into her freshman year. After finishing it, there is no need to take any more classes. The classes they have to take now are just the knowledge they need to learn for their majors. After Wei Yuxian read what the counselor said, she took a deep breath and replied, "Thank you, teacher," to the counselor. After putting down the phone, she still couldn't recover from the shocking news. The man next to her noticed something strange about her and asked, "What's wrong?" Wei Yuxian turned to look at the man and said, "We have very few classes this semester. After the first class in the morning on Thursday, we can have the weekend off. After experiencing nearly full classes in my freshman year, this is unbelievable. Fu Xuanyi, isn't this very good? It should be more relaxed." Wei Yuxian covered her little heart and said, "I just can't believe it. I can rest for 3.5 days a week, which is equivalent to half of it." Fu Xuanyi curled his lips and smiled because of her cute little appearance. Wei Yuxian felt a little better after learning that she would only use half of her class time a week, and she was thinking about what to do with her time on Friday. Great time cannot be wasted. She kept thinking about going home for dinner, but she had no idea why, and she had no idea at all. If she wanted to play, she didn't know where to go. Besides, she was no longer alone and had 2 babies at home. But if I don't go to play, do I have to study at home? It would be better to go to school to study, which would have a more atmospheric atmosphere. After returning home, she put this matter aside for the time being and focused on her 2 babies. I haven't seen her sweethearts all day long, and I really miss them. The 2 children still need to drink breast milk. She will prepare the rations for the babies at home in the morning so that they can go to school with peace of mind. The doctor said that the most scientific time for weaning is 10 months. Her baby is only more than 3 months old now and it will take a long time to drink. However, babies do not only drink breast milk during these 10 months. After a certain number of months, they also need to add complementary foods and drink formula milk. At the dinner table, Wei Yuxian was eating, looking at the small wooden bed beside her. On the cute little wooden bed are her 2 cute little babies. The 2 babies drank milk more than an hour ago, fell asleep not long after drinking, and have not woken up until now. Wei Yuxian looked at the 2 babies with loving eyes. Even while eating, she couldn't bear to take her eyes away from the 2 babies. She was looking forward to the day when the 2 babies started to call mother. At that time, she thought, she would be very happy. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 139. After dinner, Wei Yuxian and Fu Xuanyi carried the 2 babies to the room. As soon as they entered the door, the 2 babies woke up. Wei Yuxian became even happier. She caught the two babies who had just woken up and teased them for a while. She kissed them again and again on their faces and talked a lot. Zhizzy, when did you call mom? Mom went to school today. Do you miss mom? Shishi, did you behave well today? Did you cry? Did you miss your mother? Mom misses you so much. She misses you so much when she can't see you anymore. She talked to the baby to herself. The two babies naturally couldn't respond to her, but even so, she could talk happily alone. On the other side, a certain Mr. Xian who had been left out in the cold was a little unhappy. He looked at his obedient arms, with two children occupying the space. There was no space at all, and his obedient eyes did not fall on him at all. Instantly, some people started to feel jealous, and they were jealous of the two children. He crossed his hands on his chest and looked at Wei Yuxian and the two children with a slightly cold expression, thinking that Wei Yuxian would find out and come to comfort him. But he held his hands for a while, and the people over there didn't pay attention to him, and kept looking at the two children. Master Xian became even more angry. He got up and went into the bathroom to take a shower. Here, Wei Yuxian saw Fu Xuanyi get up and enter the bathroom. She noticed something was wrong with his back, but she didn't know what was wrong, so she ignored it. She lowered her head and continued teasing her two little babies. After playing with the two babies for a while, for some reason, the two babies suddenly started crying. She tried to coax them to no avail, so she had to go find the nanny with the two babies in her arms. The two nannies were very experienced. They knew at a glance that the two babies were hungry and asked Wei Yuxian to feed them milk. After Wei Yuxian learned the reason, she took the two babies back to the room and breastfed them. Only halfway through feeding, Fu Xuanyi came out from the bathroom. Seeing the scene on the bed, his pupils dilated slightly. Wei Yuxian didn't expect that he would come out suddenly. She quickly turned around with her child in her arms and said with a red face, You go out first and come in later." How could Fu Xuanyi be willing to go out? Not only did he not go out, he even walked over and walked behind Wei Yuxian and asked, "Is the baby fed?" Wei Yuxian blushed even more. She was unwilling to answer his questions. She just felt that this man was really bad. You go out first, come back in later." She had just fed Shishi, and Zhizhi was in her hand, and it would take a while. If she knew that Fu Xuanyi would come out suddenly, she would definitely not choose to feed him in the room. She would run to the children's room next door. But no one in the world would have known earlier. Now, Zhizhi is eating vigorously and will not let go. Fu Xuanyi sat down by the bed and said, "No." One word made Wei Yuxian anxious, "Get out quickly. I'll be fine in a while." How embarrassed is she to have this person here? This man is really shameless and has a thick skin than an elephant. There was no other way, the man didn't want to go out, so Wei Yuxian could only turn her back to the person with the red face. In my heart, I didn't know how many times I had scolded this person. Bad guy. Too domineering. I don't know how much time has passed, but Wei Yuxian feels that every minute and every second Fu Xuanyi spends here is very difficult. Finally, knowing that the baby was full, Wei Yuxian quickly put down her clothes and took the two children out to burp the nanny. She also calmed down outside to let the redness on her face dissipate. She sat in the baby's room, not thinking about what happened just now, and slowly calmed down. In this room, Fu Xuanyi couldn't help but get up and look for someone outside when he saw that someone hadn't come back for so long. Thinking that she had just come out with two babies in her arms, he first went to the baby's room to check. When he looked, he saw the person he was longing for inside. "I don't want to go back yet." He walked over, stood in front of her, and called, "Be good." Wei Yuxian saw that he called him such an embarrassing name in front of the two nannies and couldn't help but give him a look. Fu Xuanyi didn't care whether there was a nanny here or not. He said, "It's time to go back." Wei Yuxian didn't really want to go back, but now that she went back, this man might not know what he was going to do. In addition, she hadn't seen the baby for another day, so she only spent so much time with the baby, which was simply not enough. But the look in this man's eyes now was a little dangerous, as if she didn't go back now, something bad would happen. She admitted that she was scared, got up, and followed the man back to the room. After returning, Fu Xuanyi did not act immediately. Instead, he thoughtfully found pajamas for her, pushed her into the bathroom, and said, "Wash." Wei Yuxian looked at this man and had an illusion that after she was cleaned, she would be eaten by this man. Fu Xuanyi smiled at her and walked out of the bathroom, being more considerate and not staying. When Wei Yuxian thought of the man's dangerous look, she couldn't help but shudder and bit her lower lip. The red cloud that finally dissipated floated up again. After taking a long bath in the bathroom, she dried her hair. By the time she walked out of the bathroom, it was already an hour later. Outside, the man was wearing a white bathrobe, holding a mobile phone in his hand, and sitting on the bed. When he saw her coming out, the man looked over, his eyes, like those of a wolf, glowing green. Wei Yuxian was startled, turned around and wanted to get into the bathroom, but was stopped by the man's words. "Be good, be good." When Wei Yuxian thought of this man's shamelessness, she stopped and her legs felt a little weak. Fu Xuanyi threw the phone aside, got up and got out of bed, walked over, and approached step by step. Wei Yuxian watched the person getting closer and closer, and her little heart couldn't help but tremble. She opened her big, watery eyes pitifully. Her appearance made Fu Xuanyi's throat tighten even more. He walked over and picked her up, strode to the bed and put her on the bed. As soon as Wei Yuxian saw his look, she knew what he wanted to do. She put her hands on the man's chest and said, "Don't, I have to go to school tomorrow." This man has great physical strength and refuses to stop. If it's done again like last time, how will she go to school tomorrow? Fu Xuanyi narrowed his eyes and said, "You have been looking at the two little guys tonight." What bothered him was this matter. Wei Yuxian's eyes widened, she didn't expect the man to say such words. "So, he is jealous. Are you jealous of two children?" Wei Yuxian looked at him in disbelief and felt, this man seemed a bit childish. Why do you even want to eat the baby's jealousy? They are babies. It's her baby. It's his baby too. After getting pregnant, the celibate Buddhist fiercely dotes on his beloved wife. Author, Zhu Yi. Chapter 140. Wei Yuxian said confidently, "They are my babies. I haven't seen them for a day and I miss them very much." Fu Xuanyi stared into her eyes and asked, "What about me? So you don't even give me a look?" A certain Mr. Xian was so jealous that he even made his two children jealous. Wei Yuxian frowned slightly, looked at him accusingly, and said, "After school today, didn't I chat with you all the way back? Also, after the child goes to bed, aren't we the only ones left?" He just stared at the time she spent with the child. She continued, "Look, when I came back, the children were sleeping. I just played with them for a while. In total, I didn't spend as much time with the children as I did with you." She tried to reason with the man. But the jealous man didn't want to reason at all and said, "I don't care." Very confident. Wei Yuxian is going to be very angry with him. She looked at him accusingly and said nothing, as if to say, "You are so domineering." No, this man is very domineering." Fu Xuanyi lowered his head to kiss her and bit her lips. Whenever she struggled, he would apply more force. Wei Yuxian felt pain and did not dare to struggle anymore. The man bit her lips inch by inch, biting her delicate lips until they trembled, crying for mercy. All the strength in Wei Yuxian's body was removed, and she lay limply on the bed. All her sense and everything else had left home. The man's kiss was very domineering, so tough that he did not allow her to refuse at all. She sank into the man's domineering kiss. Gradually, her body became hot and uncomfortable. This was a very unfamiliar feeling that she rarely felt, but she didn't know how to relieve it, so she could only let her body get hotter and hotter. Fu Xuanyi noticed the changes in her body. She was hotter and more active than before, so he knew that she was in love. Some surprise, it turns out that his obedience also needs him, not just him who needs her. He ended the kiss and looked down at the person under him, his eyes unable to focus. This look was very seductive. He also thought that tomorrow is Thursday and Guai only has one class. If tonight, then Guai won't be so hard tomorrow. He will be more restrained and won't overwork Guai. Thinking of this, he gently stroked Wei Yuxian's face with his hand and asked, "Is it hot?" Wei Yuxian nodded confusedly and said, "It feels uncomfortable." She looked at him with wet eyes, wanting to ask him what was wrong with her and why she had this strange feeling. But her mind hasn't woken up yet, and she's still stuck in the feeling Fu Xuanyi gave her just now. Fu Xuanyi didn't want to let his family suffer, so he lowered his head and started tonight's wonderful journey. Wei Yuxian felt very unreal this night, because this feeling was so wonderful. She also knew why she became so strange. If she feels like this again in the future, she will know why. But, so shy. Because of this man, not only did he do those shy things, he also, once again competed with the two babies for food. When she saw that touch on the man's mouth, her brain exploded. I wiped it on his mouth several times before wiping it clean, but the feeling of shyness was still there. Later, in order to avoid being shy, she simply started to pretend to be dead and let the man hold her to clean her. After coming out, she fell asleep as soon as she touched the bed. The next day, she had class in the first period in the morning, and Fu Xuanyi also had to go to work in the company, so they all got up early. When she woke up, she saw some red scratches on the man's chest, as well as 1 or 2 tooth marks. Seeing this, she remembered last night again. This man was so ashamed. So she quickly got up and ran into the bathroom. Before entering the bathroom, she turned around and glanced at the man over there, and happened to see the man's back, which had more scratches. When I thought that these were all done by myself, I didn't dare to look any further and slipped into the bathroom. Fu Xuanyi got up slowly and followed her steps and walked in. Squeezing toothpaste next to her, he said, "Come back to bed after class." Wei Yuxian yawned appropriately, nodded her head, and said, "I understand." In fact, Fu Xuanyi didn't last long last night, only 2 or 3 times, and he was very restrained. Otherwise, she wouldn't even have to go to school today. However, she still went to bed a little later. She was a little sleepy and not in such good spirits. On the other hand, the man next to her went to bed later than her last night and spent more energy than she did. Why didn't he look tired at all? His face was glowing red, and those who didn't know thought he had taken some magic pill to maintain such a good condition. Wei Yuxian felt very strange. Recalling the previous times, it seemed to be like this. She looked like she had been sucked out, while Fu Xuanyi looked full of energy. Unfair, so unfair. After washing up, they went downstairs to have breakfast. Wei Yuxian also had to prepare some food for the 2 babies. Because there was only one class today and she would be back soon, she didn't prepare much and waited for the children to eat fresh food after she came back. So soon, she came out of the baby's room. "It's time to go to school." Fu Xuanyi sent her there, followed by a car, Lu Chengxiao and the others. Along the way, Wei Yuxian had no energy and was drowsy. Seeing that she was so tired, Fu Xuanyi asked her to sleep for a while and call her again when she got to school. After Wei Yuxian heard this, she slept for a while in the car, but she felt like she had not slept for long when she was woken up by the man. She opened her eyes and glanced outside. The car had already arrived at the teaching building where she was waiting for class. "Are we here?" She was still a little confused and her voice was soft. Fu Xuanyi couldn't help but rub her head, mess up her hair, and said, "Well, we're here." Wei Yuxian woke up a lot. She was still sleepy and hadn't slept enough, but she was more energetic than before. She unbuckled her seat belt and said, "I'm going to class." Just when she was about to get out of the car, the man grabbed her hand, pulled her back, and kissed her on the lips. Before she could react, the man ended the kiss and said with a smile in his eyes, "Go ahead." Wei Yuxian said "Oh" in confusion and got out of the car in a daze. This look makes people want to bully her. But when she thought that she would have to go to class later and couldn't bully people too harshly, she stopped thinking. Behind them, Lu Chengxiao and others parked the car and came behind Wei Yuxian. Each of them was carrying a school bag and looked a bit like a student. At this moment, when 8 people were rushing to class early in the morning, there were many people attending class in this teaching building.